It is Friday, March 21st. This evening, the Eagle Forum in Birmingham will have a candidate forum for the congressional candidates in the 6th Congressional District in Alabama. The candidates will be given 5 to 8 minutes to speak. This is a preview and rehearsal of what I'm going to say. During the past month, I have been charging that there is not government of, by, and for the people in Washington, D.C. I have been further charging that the causes of that condition are also causes of Congress being dysfunctional and not able to do its job properly for the American people. I have been further saying that the political class in Washington benefits from these defective conditions and will not undertake any serious consideration of change to fix these defects. And only the voters acting in concert can potentially force the political class in Washington to act. I have, during the past month, been endeavoring to get the other candidates to discuss this, comment on whether they're in agreement that these defective conditions exist, what diagnosis of the causes do they have, and what proposals do they have for the country to try to fix them. The other candidates have not responded. I have further posted an open letter on the internet addressed to the Alabama legislative delegation in Washington, basically saying that I am raising these questions in the 6th Congressional District. Do they consider the issues worthy of discussion and debate by the candidates and consideration by the voters? Senator Shelby's Washington office called me back and basically gave me a non-response response, and Senator Sessions' office and Representative Baucus' office have not responded. Without input by them, I have, in my diagnosis, I think there is a money monster in politics that is the main cause of these defects in governance. There is also immense power and riches to be had by those in Washington, D.C., and the combination results in there not being governance of, by, and for the people. And just try to define that term. It's not just the right to vote. The voters must know what their lawmakers are doing and why they are doing it. And also, they must have significant input into the determination of whose names get put on the ballot to choose from. With the huge cost of presidential campaigns and Senate campaigns and House of Representatives campaigns, there is continuous, ongoing fundraising, and further at the critical points in time in the election cycle, when it is being determined who are the viable candidates, a very, very small percentage of citizens are funders, and that results in, that is one of the factors that they're not being government of, by, and for the people, given the attunement of the lawmakers to the funders and the relationships that are built up. Now, I've been speaking a little bit in terms of in generalities, but let me throw out a couple specific things. One thing regarding the most important piece of social legislation passed in the past 50 years, to wit, the Affordable Care Act. I was reading this book called Inside National Health Reform, and it was telling me about Big Pharma being at the bargaining table and the health insurance companies, and the sense that I got was that this was not government of, by, and for the people. Now, one can certainly accord some significance to, say, health insurance companies employing tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of employees and having a large amount of stockholder value, and that can be taken into consideration, but that should not give those entities to be in charge of the situation. Another thing to throw out is that the political class in Washington frequently expresses that this continuous fundraising is deplorable. Now, when they say that, are they just saying, oh, spending all this time doing fundraising takes time away from doing our job? Otherwise, don't worry, you've fully got government of, by, and for the people in Washington? Or is there a problem that this continuous fundraising reveals that there is a severe defect in governance, so that there is not government of, by, and for the people? Now let's turn to dysfunctionality of Congress. While the lawmakers are dependent on the funders for their source of funding, they also need votes to get elected, and it is to their advantage to keep their side riled up, angry against the other side, turn every matter into a life or death, us against them issue in order to keep up the voter turnout on their side. Another example of dysfunctionality is, for the people, simple laws or less intrusive laws may be better, but it is personally advantageous to the politicians to have complex laws and more intrusive laws that allow for them to solicit more campaign donations, and also their lobbyist cohorts can charge more lobbying fees for lobbying regarding more complex provisions. A final, or a third, dysfunctionality, and perhaps the worst, is that with the us against them, there is basically, on the most important issues, a stalemate, so that each side can, in keeping their side riled up, show that they've not given in, and can just gets kicked down the road for someone in the future to solve when it's harder to solve. Just think about the performance of Congress for the past 10 or 15 years, and think about, say, tax reform. Do you think the Congress we know is capable of doing tax reform or immigration law? Thus far, the Congress that we know is unable to address immigration law reform. Can the Congress we know address entitlements or come up with budgets regularly? It appears to me not, and those are just indicia of the dysfunctionality I'm trying to talk about. In short, Congress needs fixing first, or at least a start on fixing Congress. And these various proposals that the other candidates offer are just sort of moot until we can get a Congress that can begin to reasonably start to do its job properly for the American people. And perhaps if Congress faces up to these problems and starts discussing, what their own diagnosis, what can be done, perhaps at the same time the logjam will break up a little bit in trying to reach agreement and taking action on the very important issues. As I said, I've endeavored to get the other candidates to discuss this. I've endeavored to get input from the Alabama senators and from Representative Baucus, to no avail, and so it's just up to you, the voters, to decide what you think.